Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching. My name is Colton Krueger. I'm currently an intern with Marquette Sports Performance, and I have a short presentation for you here today. I'll play a short video to introduce us to the topic.
I gotta grind, won't stop, hustle won't quit, shine like no other, I be on some other shit. I got a high price lifestyle, super bad. If I want it, bet I got it. If I don't, bet all I gotta do is go. Get, stay about my business, ball till I fall, floss until I finish. I did go, get, stay about my business. I live in just a killer, stacking million to the ceiling. Every day above ground, all I wanna do is ball, put my money over. Put my hustle overall.
Stu's done with his combine. We'll discuss why he's doing said combine. Perhaps a revival in the rugby career? Only time can tell. So Stu gave me the opportunity this fall so graciously to complete a 15-week case study with him as my subject. Test before, give him a workout program for 15 weeks, and test after and see how much we can improve his athletic performance. Specifically, so we have a 32-year-old individual, as you can see by the sharply dressed man on the right side of the screen. He has a background in collegiate rugby, and his recent training is aerobic. So he's been training for cycling the last 6 months leading up to this program. So he's largely detrained in what our goal is, which is linear power in anaerobic sports. And we're just talking about an off season here. So a snippet of a season, it's a 15-week case study over the course of this whole semester. Here on the right, you can see Stu's home country, Great Britain, their bobsleigh team. Great example of sport that uses a lot of linear power. And there's Stu representing his home country. We're a helmet. Bobsleighing is dangerous. So my principles of training, my foundation that I built all my workouts on. Number one, in order, core mobility and stability. The core is the start of everything. But if you're doing a full body movement, you're going to have an adequate amount of core strength and coordination. Number two, loaded hinge and triple extension, putting force into the ground. Using triple extension via loaded hinge is going to be how you're going to generate the most force, and that's one of the movements that we need to train to elicit the maximum improvement in athletic performance. Eccentric hamstring, also very important in the biomechanics of running, and something that we don't want Stu to pull on the pitch or on the field or I should say, whatever you call a bobsleigh track. We have a squat and lower push, upper body push, and upper body pull being below upper body push, because in linear force, say you're pushing a bobsleigh, your pull, your upper posterior chain is going to act more as stabilizers for the shoulder girdle, where your triceps, shoulders are going to be actively providing force into the direction that you're trying to move this loaded object. And here's briefly some exercises that specifically represented these movements in my workout. So began warm-ups with plank series and tried to incorporate anti-rotation at least once a week, if not twice a week. Olympic derivatives were the big driver of this entire 15-week phase. And about halfway through, I introduced high-resistance speed training as well, with chains on the turf. Eccentric hamstring examples being Nordics and RDLs, present through all mesocycles. Squat and lower push, velocity-based training is going to be a big focus there. Upper body push, bench and shoulder press, and upper body pull, chin-ups and rows. Classic, no surprise there. This is just pointing out that the more important the principle, the more sport specificity it should have. We have calendars of fall semester 2021. I began with testing and general physical preparedness, 2 weeks given that he was detrained, rolling right into 4 weeks of hypertrophy, and I'll go more in depth in the coming slides on these. This is just a quick overview. 4 weeks of hypertrophy, so we have a foundation of muscle mass that we can build our strength and power on later. And here's the biggest phase, 5 weeks of strength, late October into most of November, and ending with 3 weeks of power where we're dropping the reps and trying to move the bar faster, and then finishing off with 1 week of testing. General physical preparedness, along with the entire 15-week span, I followed a 4-day-a-week setup with an upper-lower split. seemed to work best with both our busy schedules. Myself and Stu going 5 or 6 days a week wasn't really feasible. So trying to get an hour segment or less, because that's most of the time all you're going to have available to work with athletes, is fitting everything into a 1 hour window or less. In the first 2 weeks, I had to build the heavy singles so as not to max out right away with him being detrained. We'd use those heavy singles to get a percentage in the coming weeks. I used Olympic derivatives 2 times a week, a clean once and a snatch once in the first couple weeks. And these aren't full cleans or snatches. These are pulls from the floor, just getting the basic movement patterns down. Squatting twice a week, 1 time back squat, 1 time front squat, benching once a week, and then the other upper body day is going to showcase overhead press as the main primary movement. And establishing basic plyometrics, box jumps, depth drops. And kettlebells, I thought, were a good way to incorporate lighter triple extension, and also I use them for conditioning sometimes. Ask Stu about that. Hypertrophy. I used Olympic derivatives as the primary exercises, and now instead of just pulling from the floor, using USA weightlifting's principle of doing partial range of motion to refine technique before you go into full range of motion. So beginning in the hang, catching in the power position above parallel. Early stage plyometric progressions, I like to not only to save time, but also using French contrast to combine into a superset, squat and say single leg box jump, or broad jump to a box jump, things like that. The main staple of this phase is having 10 plus sets per muscle group of 8 to 15 reps to elicit the maximum adaptation in muscle size. I also threw in their dynamic front squat, similar to the Olympic derivatives that I've been using. Lower reps, and we're moving the bar fast. Just because we're in the hypertrophy phase doesn't mean everything has to be an 8 to 15 rep range. We still want to be moving athletically in low reps to elicit the sport. And actually, this progression of 3 reps, staying above a certain velocity, starting off 1 meter per second, dropping 1/10 of a meter per second every week. This is the full extent of the hypertrophy phase, and then this goes all the way into the next phase, which is strength, down to 0.4 meters per second at 2 reps. Whatever weight he's able to maintain that speed at. Strength, this is a 5-week phase. I introduced what I call the max effort concept. I actually took this from the strength and conditioning staff with Oregon football. For bench and squat, we build to a heavy single. You get 3 sets to build to a heavy single, not quite maximal, but pretty close. And then you're going to take that weight and you're going to drop down to 3 reps, dropping the weight as minimally as possible. So say 10, 15 pounds, trying to hit 3 reps. So you're barely squeezing out that 3rd rep. Then you repeat it again, drop the weight, go down to 5, drop the weight, go down to 8. These rep ranges are here on the 5 and 8 reps, so that if you undershoot 5 and you go too light, 5's easy. You have an extra 2 reps there, so we're maximizing that set still. Here's an example of it in the workout. Key point here is that there's 4 minutes of rest. It's very time consuming, but to elicit that kind of effort, you need a lot of rest. I also, to be more efficient with time, I'm partnering that with, that's a push exercise with a pull exercise, explosive pull-ups, which aren't too taxing, not a lot of tempo. And here, same concept as the dynamic front squat. We're introducing dynamic bench, starting off with 1 meter per second, and high resistance speed training with chains, starting off pretty significantly heavy, 50% body weight, and by the end of the strength phase, we're down to 30%. That'll continue in the power phase. Now we're percentage based. We're past the max effort bench that we've done for the last 5 weeks in max effort squat. The Olympic lifts are now full Olympic lifts. And all of these are going to be 4 reps or less, trying to move the bar fast. At 80% plus, percentage exactly depends on if we're talking about Olympic lift or squat or bench. And now the chain clusters are going to drop from 30% body weight down to 10%, getting really close to free weight sprints. Accessories are going to drop in reps to 4 to 10. And plyometrics are going to increase in complexity to say 3 strung together using the Vertimax or the Raptor, and even some like shuffle to sprint sort of things that are getting closer to the sport specific movement as we get closer to time to test. And also one of our testing metrics was a 6-second max effort bike test on a watt bike. So started to include bike intervals have been present throughout, but now they're really getting down into that less than 10-second range. Results, Stu's body composition went up by 9. He increased his weight by 9 pounds. By the end, that leveled off a little bit to more like 5 or 6. His laser gate time, he dropped nearly 1/10 of a second. With his 20-yard laser gate time, it was slightly more, but you can see that our biggest adaptations are in that first 10 yards, working on acceleration, not so much top end speed, which makes sense given that we're not doing long sprints on a track. Pro agility, this was one of the more impressive results that Stu had, dropping 4/10 of a second. Some of that can be attributed to the technicality of the drill, but there's still definitely some improvements being made there at a muscular adaptation level. Similarly, his broad jump increased by 7.5 inches. And his watt bike test that I just mentioned, his max wattage increased by a little close to 300 watts. Isometric mid-thigh pull, he increased his peak vertical force by a significant amount, and the amount of time was lessened that it took him to do that. On average, over his 3 reps, dropped about 3/10 of a second. Main takeaway there is that it's less. Put an asterisk by squat and bench because he started off with heavy singles, not with true maxes, but there's still definitely some improvement being made there. My reflections are that in the future, I'd like to screen the workouts a little more before administering them. I get a feel for them myself and how long they're going to go. That was a problem we had early on. And sometimes the workouts were a little harder than I anticipated. Also of note, Stu is an ideal subject. So he's detrained, meaning that he's going to get the maximum training adaptations, and his results are going to be very good compared to someone who's already highly trained at their sport. And he also, being a strength and conditioning professional, performed maximal effort every time he's doing velocity-based training, which isn't the usual circumstance across a team with a wide range of individuals. Some great practice with elite form and force decks. I'd like to use more VBT in the future. I could definitely go into like a 45-minute presentation of this. And Stu had quite a battery of supplements headlined by creatine and whey protein that I would go more in depth with. I just want to finish off here talking about the testing metrics and the improvements that Stu had. I think it would be hard to name a field sport where the principles of linear force production, vertical force production, and also just general strength and hypertrophy, cases where those would not improve the athletic performance of all these field sports. So I think this workout would obviously have to be tweaked to the specific needs of a sport, but it has a lot of carryover in the world of collegiate athletics and beyond. Here's where I'd ask questions if this wasn't pre-recorded. And I just want to thank the whole strength and conditioning staff at Marquette, Todd, Maggie, Stu, Emily, and Dan. Learned a lot from you guys this semester, and I really appreciated you guys taking me on and letting me work with your teams. It's very valuable to me. And also the intern group that I was with. You guys are great. You made things a lot more fun this semester. And again, a special thanks to Stu for allowing me to write a workout program for 15 weeks and quite literally be a guinea pig. Thank you very much.